Hello, I'm Dr. James Bogash, expert in health and longevity and creator of Bogash Life and Balance. And today we're going to talk about one of those other things that has always killed millions of people that doesn't seem to matter in the past 2 years. Certainly heart disease. I've mentioned that everything in perspective, but people are like, well, you can't catch heart disease from the person next to you, but somehow dying of heart disease is different than dying of an infectious disease. I haven't quite figured that one out yet, but so if that's the argument most people use, let's refer to antimicrobial resistant bacteria. And there was a study just recently published looking at the numbers of people that die every year from these infections. And the number is quite staggering. In 2019, it was 4.95 million, almost 5 million people that died with deaths were associated with antimicrobial resistant bacteria. So associated, like we certainly see that number with COVID. However, 1.27 million were directly attributed to these bacteria. So comparing that with COVID, we've got 5.66 million people have died, so about 2.83 million per year. A huge chunk of those are associated, not directly caused. Can't look at the numbers but we can assume that the numbers of directly caused by COVID is probably way smaller than that, probably in the range of about 5 to 10%, if that. So these bacteria are clearly killing more people year in, year out, and they are contagious. So there goes that argument about what we really need to focus on, but it just boils back down to the attention that's been focused on this is unwarranted because we have other things that have been killing us for a long time that has never been as important. Keep in mind those numbers were from 2019, but this happens every single year. And given the amount of overuse of antibiotics in COVID, somewhere around 70%, the numbers vary, but about 70% of hospitalized patients with a viral infection were given antibiotics. That number is just going to get worse because we're absolutely creating antibiotic-resistant bacteria. Of those infections, most of them were respiratory. 6 main types of bacteria, things like Mrsa, so methicillin-resistant Staph aureus, were on the list. So Mrsa, most people are familiar with, and we all know you probably know somebody who might have died or had a really bad experience with Mrsa, ended up with a PICC line on antibiotics for weeks or months. So what does this mean? Because there's answers for this. First of all, the judicious use of antibiotics has been an argument for a long time, except during the pandemic. We've kind of threw that out the window, and we gave a lot of antibiotic prescriptions just in case. I can tell you that most of my patients that had COVID were given prescriptions for antibiotics. When I had COVID, it wasn't even a concern, an issue. It was a viral infection, just needed to keep my immune system up. So what do we do in that sense? First of all, lifestyle choices that build up the immune system. That should come as no big surprise coming from me. Focus on your microbiome, your own bacteria, the stuff we want there. We know that when we have a healthy microbiome, that it fights off other things from growing. They're territorial. So having healthy bacteria in the gut microbiome will prevent us from having respiratory tract infections of other viruses and other bacteria. And avoid antibiotics unless absolutely necessary. If your doctor writes a prescription, look him in the eye and say, listen, do I really need this? Because there's a time and a place for them. If somebody's it's got a kidney infection that they haven't been able to stop and it's about to go septic, not the time to discuss whether or not you should be taking it. It's a discussion to have with the prescribing doctor about whether he's giving this to you just in case or whether he really feels that you need that. These are all different ways that we need to do individually to manage our overuse of antibiotics, which have only gotten worse during the pandemic, and creating these superbugs that are killing us off at greater numbers than any viral pandemic has ever done. I don't want to say has ever done, but this current pandemic. So, as always, I'll post a link to this particular study in the description. Make sure you like this video, share it with somebody who you think needs the information, and subscribe to the channel.